it's kind of become customary on the show for me to ask, anytime somebody fills in for Jake, I
Okay.
ask them about their experiences with him.
Okay.
So first of all, like, would you say that you were a Jake fan when you were growing up?
Well, see, I wasn't even, that's the crazy part about me and pro wrestling. I wasn't like a pro wrestling fan growing up. I didn't start watching pro wrestling until the late 90s, like right when Sting took on the whole Crow persona. I was playing football in high school and college, and that was my focus. And I don't even remember exactly what caught my eye about pro wrestling. I think one of my earliest memories of pro wrestling, though, was when Taker locked the Ultimate Warrior in the casket, and he was, they were trying to drill holes in it so he could breathe because he was going to die. And like, I don't even remember why I saw or watched that or why that was ingrained into my memory. But then again, like I said, I didn't start watching wrestling like on a consistent basis and becoming a fan of the business until like Sting took on that Crow persona. And I just remember liking that movie, The Crow. And I don't know if it just came across the screen, saw an advertisement or whatever the case was. And then I started watching it. Like it became my Monday night ritual, on into college. Me and my buddies that lived in the dorm together, we would get together and watch Monday Night Raw. Even though I played football, you would think we'd be watching Monday Night Football. And I remember watching wrestling so much more than I ever watched football when I was, growing up and even when I was playing football. So I couldn't say that I was a Jake the Snake fan growing up because I didn't watch him wrestle, but then after I got into the business, I'd met him a few times, probably in some of his darker days. And then to be involved with him in AEW and see him in the good light that he has been in the entire time that, we've kind of been connected and working together has been an awesome, awesome experience. And, it's an invaluable, some of the advice he's given to me. I've seen him give to other people, at different times when AEW would go and tape stuff in Orlando at Universal Studios, like his more specific job. If I was there, of course, he would come out with me and we would do our thing. But he was there to try to help the younger generation learn how to speak, because that's one of the greatest things that Jake can do is he can cut a promo and he can cut you deep with words that almost nobody else can do, and in the cool kind of calm snakish way that he does it. And you did see some. I'll give credit to the guns, to the boys, Austin and Colton. I saw them, biting his ear all the time, trying to get ideas on how they could cut their promos, and they'd bring what they had to Jake, and Jake would say, "That's really good, but let's try to do it this way, and you speak this way, and you speak that way." And their promo skills just skyrocketed from there because they went to him. And some people don't, but that's just how wrestling goes. Some people search out the advice and actually take the advice, and then there's a lot of ask holes, as we like to say it. Yeah, they like to ask a lot of questions, but have no intention of growing from those questions that they ask.
So some guys will actually go out of their way to ask questions just for what? For appearance sake.
I think it's appearance sake sometimes. I think it's, maybe their ideas, like they'll go to that person and they think they'll get the advice they want to hear. And then that person doesn't tell them exactly what they want to hear or tell them how good they are and how good they're doing and kissing their ass and making them feel like they're just the bee's knees of pro wrestling's future right there. And they'll go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's do this. Let's try this nuance. Let's try this way to talk, or let's try this way to work, or let's try this way to, be a new character or your character, whatever it is. And there's a lot of guys and girls in this business that don't want to hear that. They just want to hear how great they are, and they don't want to hear how good they could be if they worked and improved on things. And there's a lot of people in the business that have been around the business that are in AEW and every other company around the world, and they can give a lot of good advice, but there's not a lot of people taking that advice these days, it seems like. Now, there are some, like I said, I'll give credit to the guns and what they did, and I'm sure there were a lot more that I didn't see specifically, but Jake was there in a wealth of knowledge. And, at one time AEW had Arn Anderson, and we still have Dean Malenko that's around, Jerry Lynn that's still around. These are guys that have been in the business for longer than most of the kids that are on the roster have been alive. If they would stop and get the knowledge and understand the business is what it was, take what the business is now and what it's going to be in the future and kind of mesh it together, what they could create could be absolutely amazing, but it's finding that middle ground.
Now, you personally, you've been in wrestling yourself for a really long time. When did you start?
Yeah, in July I'll be celebrating my 24th year in the business, so almost a quarter century.
That's incredible. And, you know, it makes me wonder, you yourself are a ring veteran at this point, but you're getting paired up with a guy like Jake, who's just this wealth of knowledge. What
Yeah.
kind of stuff would you say that you have learned from Jake?
Well, for me specifically, I think the big thing that Jake, when I was coming into AEW, I was coming from Japan. I'd been in New Japan Pro Wrestling for 9 years at that point, and the Japanese fans, they knew who I was. They knew who the Murder Hawk Monster was. They knew who the American Psycho was before I transitioned into the Murder Hawk Monster. And I think coming back into the U.S. market where I've been out of it like on any kind of consistent basis, a lot of independence, a lot of short shots here and there, but I hadn't been on U.S. TV since my very short run with WWE, and the personality and the character and the persona that I was portraying now was nothing in comparison to what that was at that time in 2009 and 2010. So what Jake did for me just right off the bat was give some credibility, for people who didn't know who I was. The hardcore wrestling fans, they knew. But there's just like a general fan that was probably had no idea who I was. And they might have put two and two together after they kind of figured out, why did this guy kind of look familiar? And then they go, oh my God, he was in WWE for a short moment. He was in TNA for 5 years before that. Then they go, oh my God, I remember that guy from way back then, but I don't know who this person is now. I don't know who the Murder Hawk Monster is now. And to come in as Jake's monster, as his protege in AEW, it gave me an instant credibility. And then what he did for me more so than anything was helping me learn how to give a voice to the Murder Hawk Monster. For the few short moments that I've even been allowed to speak in my time, uh, he has helped me kind of hone that skill in. When we were doing a lot of the AEW Darks in Jacksonville, there was a lot of freedom there. And like after a while, I finally went to him. I said, listen, I don't need another 3-minute squash match. I don't need, these matches that I get on Dark, which is fine. I'll go and do that if that's my job and that's what you want me to do. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to try to make it as fun and interesting as possible. But what I needed at the time was a chance to speak. And they were more than receptive to that. And so we created little moments that would bring Jake and I out. And, I would start speaking and he would speak and he would let me finish it off. And like we would go back and go, I really like the way you did this, but try to do it this way or think about it this way or present your mindset this way so that when you do speak, it's not just one monotone voice, but it's got inflection, it's got emotion, it's got all the different characteristics that are not just the Murder Hawk Monster as the raw guy, but somebody who can speak and who has levels and who has all this stuff. And I think that's where I learned the most from Jake was learning how to speak. I haven't had the chance to speak a lot lately since then, but it is what it is, and that's just business, and that's the way things go. But he's also helped me anytime I've needed it. If we speak at any point and I ask him for any help or advice, he's more than willing to, and he does everything that he gives me is good advice. I know how to be the Murder Hawk Monster in the ring, but giving me that voice is one of the things that he helped me out with the most.
Man, he's such a sharp guy, and you know, I think a lot of fans forget that Jake was a booker as well in Georgia
Yeah.
and in Mid-South Wrestling. So it's like he's one of these guys who doesn't just understand wrestling, he understands characters and character development. So it's like
Okay.
it's cool to see you paired up with him. And anytime you guys are on TV, man, it seems like it's a big pop and the ratings take a jump. So I'm always happy to see it. And
That's what we say too.
that's how
Big,
I've
big pop.
that that's what I've been saying here on the show at least.